Then today is the day you were warned about, the day we begin our next book, a study into the tree of life. Begin our next book. My sound works great. That's awesome. So happy Monday. The time on the clock says it's time to start. So I hope you are ready. I hope you're all so very ready to go ahead and jump into Q.B.L. I am, like I said, I've never read this before. So this ought to be a real treat to hop into for the first time with all of the most wonderful people in the world. Hour of the Moon, good. And let's see what those wonderful tarot cards have to say real quick, huh? That quick single card pull to get us started out. To let us know what's the energy behind this here book read. What's the energy? It's that one. It's the bottom one, not the top one. Oh, throw it around, why don't I? Throw everything around, why don't I? All right, there it is. Two swords. So there we are in Hokmah, in the world of the mind, Yetzirah, the moon in Libra. Well, the moon is the planetary hour, so that's good. We've got a real lunar emphasis. Subconscious mind, huh? One true goddess, welcome. Peace. Much love to you. Just like that tarot card itself, the card of peace. One of the few happy air cards, sword cards. Welcome in, everybody just coming in. So, perhaps this reading will be bringing us all more peace of mind. So, Q.B.L. being a Kabbalistic treatise on the nature and use of the tree of life by Frater Achad. Now, Frater means brother, and Achad, if I remember right, means one. Welcome in, everyone just coming in. Q.B.L. or the bride's reception. And there it is in the Hebrew right there. Aleph, Chet, Dalet. Dalet, Achad. Okay, so this book has two different introductions, one by the marvelous Lon Milo DuQuette, and then one by the author himself. We will most definitely get through those today, but there's a good chance we might go ahead and just get cracking into that first chapter as well. And One True Goddess, can you hear that music okay? She will let me know. She always does. Should be fine. Okay, so hopefully you all were able to hurry and get a copy sent to you. And if not, that's fine. We're going to start anyway. Nobody said anything. Nobody said, all right, awesome. Nobody said, wait, hold up, please, don't start without me. So we're going to go ahead and begin. So, introduction to the 2005 edition. I, magical name here, a member of the body of God, hereby bind myself on behalf of the whole universe, even as I am now physically bound unto the cross of suffering, that I will lead a spiritual life as a devoted servant of the order, that I will love all things, that I will experience all things and endure all things, that I will continue in the knowledge and conversation of my holy guardian angel, that I will work without attachment, that I will work in truth, that I will rely ultimately upon myself, that I shall realize my true will, that I will interpret every phenomenon as a particular dealing of God with my soul, and if I fail therein, may my pyramid be profaned and the eye closed to me. Well, that's a no joke type of oath right there. What's up, Zero? Welcome in. Always so great to see you. I hope you're excited for a Kabbalistic reading. As I wrote in the preface to W.H. Mueller's Polaria, The Gift of the White Stone, the above declaration is known as the Oath of the Abyss. Whosoever utters it with full magical intention invokes a terrible curse upon themselves, for they are either hopelessly deluded and committing an act of supreme spiritual presumption, or they have balanced and perfected all aspects of what most of us consider to be the self, and are now prepared to take the last irrevocable step toward becoming more than human. In both cases, the world will presume they have gone mad. Yeah, and that oath of the abyss is certainly not something that should be taken until you are well within the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. And if anything, have been instructed by said angel. You know, it might seem cool or whatever to try to jump ahead on the path and try to do advanced things, but all you're really doing is asking for a cosmic cosmic spanking. On the summer solstice of 1916, Charles Robert John Stansfield Jones, Frater Achad, an accountant from Vancouver and an AA neophyte, a 1 equals 10, formally took the oath of the abyss, thereby laying claim, in accordance with the traditions of that august fraternity, to the initiatory title Master of the Temple, 8 equals 3. Jones dutifully reported this event in a telegram to Aleister Crowley, his superior in the order, who 9 months earlier in September had labored in vain, he thought, to beget a child with his Scarlet Woman, Jean Robert Foster. Crowley was amazed by the circumstances of Jones' initiation and the timing of the event. He wrote in his Confessions, every cause must produce its proper effect, so that, in this case, the son whom I willed to beget came to birth on a plane other than the material. What I had really done was therefore to beget a magical son. So, precisely 9 months afterward, that is, at the summer solstice of 1916, Frater OIV, the motto of C. Stansfield Jones, as a probationer, entirely without my knowledge, became a babe of the abyss. Jones' apparent success also represented in Crowley's mind a stunning validation of the AA system of magical attainment. The proud father gushed. I could only conclude that his success was almost wholly due to the excellence of the system which I had given to the world. In short, it was the justification of my whole life, the unique and supreme reward of my immeasurable toils. Crowley's confidence in Achad was further bolstered by a string of discoveries Jones would soon make, vital Kabbalistic keys that unlocked fundamental mysteries of the Book of the Law and the Aeon of Horus. Some of these were outlined in a short, posthumously published book, Liber 31, which Jones sent Crowley in 1919. Crowley couldn't have been happier with the revelations. Your key opens the palace. It seemed in Akkad Crowley truly had found the one foretold in the Book of the Law, the one to follow thee, the one who shall discover the key of it all, the magical child and brilliant heir apparent to the great beast and prophet of the Aeon of Horus. Perhaps he had, but the father son relationship these two great adepts shared would not endure to the end. Eventually, it would become strained to the breaking point, and amazingly, we know the exact day this beautiful relationship began to sour. We have a written record of the precise moment. The moment Frater Achad either experienced a quantum leap in consciousness or stepped off the zenith edge of supernal adeptship into the abyss of occult madness. Oh no. It happened on May 31st, 1922, as Jones was writing the fourth chapter of Q.B.L, or The Bride's Reception, a moment that would literally turn the Kabbalistic universe upside down. I had written thus far, May 31st, 1922, when I was rewarded with the opening up of secrets so wonderful that they have changed my whole conception of the plan of the Kabbalah, and have indeed proved not alone a lightning flash to destroy the house of God, but a serpent of wisdom to reconstruct it, and yet again a star which explains all symbolism. This matter, being of such transcendent importance, will be dealt with in the form of appendixes to this volume, which will be obtainable under certain special conditions. Meanwhile, the main plan of this book will be followed as originally intended, since it is necessary that the student should have a clear and comprehensive grasp of the old system before he could appreciate the new. And luckily, I think most of us have a pretty good grasp of Kabbalah in this group. Somewhat. Good enough, huh? Fortunately for us, Jones did indeed follow the original plan of the text through to completion and saved elucidations on his revolutionary theories for the book's appendixes. This thoughtful gesture, in my opinion, renders the main text of Q.B.L the clearest, most understandable, and practical introduction to the study of Kabbalah written to that date. It also effectively prepares the more Kabbalistically educated reader for the provocative ideas presented in the appendixes. Concepts that suggest that the traditional allocation of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet upon the 22 paths of the tree of life should be, in essence, reversed in their positions. And I remember we did touch on that a bit in Gareth Knight's Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism. He mentioned that it was in that, I want to say it was maybe that very last reading we did. It was definitely within the tarot sections. Oh, you know what? It might have been in the major arcana. And when he was talking about, I don't know, a handful of different people's attributions of the Hebrew letters. So therefore, the trumps of the tarot to the paths. He definitely, I remember, did talk about Frater Achad's in there. But here we're going to go even deeper. Such a suggestion isn't necessarily heretical, especially when posited from the point of view of a master of the temple. 8 equals 3. So these are the in the AA and the OTO, they do these grade systems. So an 8 equals 3 would be somebody who has successfully crossed the abyss and now their consciousness resides at the Binah level of the tree, at least if I'm not mistaken. And adept whose consciousness abides above the abyss. Hey, hey, that separates the supernal triad of the tree of life, Kether, Hokmah, and Binah, an abyss below which division is the result of contradiction, and above which contradiction is unity. Crowley, however, was not impressed with what he considered to be Akkad's flawed and immature grasp of this rule of contraries. He would later write, but this rule must be applied with skill and discretion, if error is to be avoided. It is a lamentable fact that worthy zealator of AA, one Frater Achad, having been taught patiently enough by the seer to use this formula, was lured by his vanity to suppose that he had discovered it himself, and proceeded to apply it indiscriminately. He tried to stand the serpent of wisdom on its head, and argued that as he was a 1 equals 10 of the order, he must equally be a 10 equals 1. As the Book of Lies says, I wrenched dog backwards to find God. Now God barks. He would have been better advised to reverse his adored 1 and taken a dose of Eno, which, if I remember right, is a laxative. I need a little more light in here. I'm going to turn on this lamp real quick before we continue. Nice. All right, then. A year later, in 1923, upon receipt of Akkad's next book, The Egyptian Revival, Crowley voiced in his diary his exasperation with the direction his son was taking. What line shall I take with regard to Frater Achad's books? I have just received the Egyptian Revival and a threat of others. The point is this: the books, even apart from the absurd new attribution proposed for the paths, are so hopelessly bad in almost every way: English, style, sense, point of view, oh, everything. Yet they may do good to people they are written for. My real concern is lest he get too much hubris and come a real cropper. His fears become, at least in Crowley's mind, a reality. He wrote in Magic in Theory and Practice, one who ought to have known better tried to improve the tree of life by turning the serpent of wisdom upside down. Yet he could not even make his scheme symmetrical. His little remaining good sense revolted at the supreme atrocities. Yet he succeeded in reducing the whole magical alphabet to nonsense and showing that he had never understood its real meaning. The absurdity of any such disturbance of the arrangement of the paths is evident to any sober student from such examples as the following. Binah, the supernal understanding, is connected with Tiferet, the human consciousness, by Zion, Gemini, the oracles of the gods, or the intuition. That is, the attribution represents a psychological fact. To replace it by the devil is either humor or plain idiocy. Again, the card Fortitude, Leo, balances majesty and mercy with strength and severity. What sense is there in putting death, the scorpion, in its stead? There are 20 other mistakes in the new wonderful illuminated from on high attribution. The student can therefore be sure of 20 more laughs if he cares to study it. Tell us how you really feel, Mr. Crowley. Of course, it can be argued that Crowley was simply jealous of Akkad's discoveries, the speed of his initiatory advancement, and his independent spirit. After all, Crowley could be viciously cruel and petty. It must be pointed out, however, that no matter how bitterly he railed against Jones' new doctrines, he always acknowledged and praised his role as the discoverer of the Kabbalistic key to Liber al Velegis, or the Book of the Law. The fact remains that Jones's behavior as the years progressed led many to believe that he suffered bouts of mental illness. Such things are hard to prove, especially where magicians are concerned, and should not necessarily cast negative aspersions upon the quality of his work done during healthier times, or negate the real possibility such behavior manifested because Jones was enraptured in inscrutably high levels of consciousness. He would join the Roman Catholic Church in an attempt to transmute this world religion into one that accepts the law of Thelema and the formula of the Age of Horus. But was that an act of insanity, or simply the bold and audacious act of a Thelemic hero? Yes, he would be put away for flinging aside his raincoat to expose his nakedness to the masses of Vancouver. But are the naked sadhus of India imprisoned for indecency? It is easy for us, especially those of us whose initiatory careers place us conspicuously low on the tree of life, to point to these incidents and speculate how Akkad's premature advance to master of the temple caused his ultimate fall into the madness of Doth, the false Sephirah, knowledge that resides in the abyss itself, to become a black brother. In truth, very few people on the face of the earth are qualified to make that judgment. Certainly not I. Akkad himself, however, gives us a chilling hint of his thoughts on this matter in a 1948 letter to Gerald York. If this new aeon is what it seems to be, it will have lifted the curse of the Magus and destroyed the glamour and lies and madness of the supernal paths. That would leave one in Doth and represent real attainment, the becoming one with those who know. Speculation and controversy aside, Frater Achad remains one of the most interesting and important magical figures of the 20th century. His initial Kabbalistic discoveries continue to yield new and provocative ideas concerning the Book of the Law and other holy books of Thelema. Q.B.L, or the Bride's Reception, is a masterpiece of Kabbalah and controversy. Its importance to the world of modern occult literature can be measured not only by its value as a remarkably understandable textbook of the fundamental principles of Kabbalah, but also by the way it offers us a rare glimpse into the heart and mind of a brilliant and sincere seeker of wisdom and truth. Lon Milo DuQuette, Costa Mesa, California. Shout out, Lon. We love you so much. Editor's note. The first and subsequent editions of Q.B.L, or The Bride's Reception, retained the author's curious and inconsistent capitalization, bolding, and underlining of certain words and phrases. While it is obvious in many cases that these irregularities were simply done to indicate italics or other typographical enhancements not executable on a manual typewriter, there are also instances where the author might have been trying to communicate something of a more esoteric nature. After much discussion, the editors of this new edition resolved not to engage in guesswork and risk undermining what might have been the author's intent or emphasis. Therefore, with the exception of editor's footnotes and corrections made from the original errata sheet, the text remains a faithful reproduction of the original. Nice. Sick. Yeah, I'm excited for this one. This ought to be a lot of fun. Okay, so now the introduction to the book itself. Introduction. Philosophically speaking, a great deal of rubbish has accumulated around the roots of the tree of life. And this has certainly deterred some truly hungry and thirsty souls from participation in the fruitful feast that awaits all who have the courage, patience, and it may be daring to claim their divine inheritance. This inheritance many have been content to exchange for a mess of pottage. In fact, even prior to the time of Esau and Jacob, ever since our forefather Adam was persuaded to accept a sour and half chewed apple as the whole fruit, his descendants have suffered, very much as the small schoolboy suffers, crying, "Never again! I'm through with forbidden fruit forever." If one were to be swayed by the learned but destructive criticism of Mr. Ginsburg, sickened by the pueril- puerilities, puerilities of some mystics who ought to know better, deceived by the apparent grossness of the secret schools whose exponents do know better, to say nothing of becoming poisoned by the unwarranted efforts of deliberate deceivers and their ignorant dupes, one might well follow the example of the small schoolboy and leave the fruit of the Kabbalistic tree alone. But fortunately, there is an aspect of this work slightly different from those usually considered, which is or has been to me of great interest and importance. Let me first give due credit and thanks to all those who in the past and in the present have transmitted the fragments of the secret wisdom and have done so much towards fashioning them into a complete system of attainment, the fruit of whose labors I have unhesitatingly used, as all true initiates intend their followers should do. That I do not mention these by name is not through lack of courtesy, but rather that I feel it desirable to confuse the issue as little as possible. In other words, although the Holy Kabbalah must, of course, have a history, just for once I intend to take the liberty of leaving aside the historical background and with it the squabbles over its origin as to whether it was in the beginning transmitted by God to the angels and in turn to men, or whether it arose from obscurity within the last 1800 years, considering rather its present use. We should learn to take advantage of the past, using the scaffoldings of the temple and such ideas connected therewith as are of use in our particular case, adding thereto the result of our own investigations. In other words, we shall find in the tree of life and its correspondences a convenient means of classification, a sort of filing cabinet, together with much valuable material ready to file, and room for all that we may collect in our future researches. We shall find in this filing cabinet a means of getting rid of a great many ideas which have been valueless on account of their unbalanced nature, and this not by means of suppression, which forms complexes, but by careful arrangement, thus setting our minds in order and by balancing these ideas against their opposites, leaving the mind in a state which transcends both aspects, thus gradually regaining our lost equilibrium, which is the basis of the work. The intention of this essay is to supply a basis whereby all serious students of the occult and mystic lore may learn to attain to equilibrium on all planes, thus gradually taking up their great inheritance, and while climbing higher and higher towards the summit of the work, planting their feet yet more firmly upon a sure foundation, that of direct experience. To such as succeeded in their endeavors, history will matter little, except insofar as it represents their own early struggles, or it may or it may be gives hints of the means to be employed. But in the end, they will find themselves at one with the beginning, citizens of that kingdom wherein all is here and now. All right, that does it for the intro. So I know this first chapter is a little on the long side, but we'll go ahead and do it. I think it's about 15 pages if I remember right. That ain't too bad. All right then. Chapter 1. The formation of the tree of life being a Kabbalistic conception of the creative process. It may be well to warn the casual reader of this treatise that its title, excuse me, The Bride's Reception, is not intended to imply that the contents will read exactly like a French novel. I shall make no attempt to explain my choice of this title, but rather rely upon it attracting those who have already made at least a superficial study of the Holy Kabbalah, sufficient to enable them to get a glimpse of its meaning. On the other hand, let not those who are serious in their search for more light rashly turn aside on account of the initial difficulty of what may seem to them a new system, or a different presentation of an old one. It is essential to my present purpose that some outline be given of the formation of the tree of life, and this not alone in graphic form, although the graphic presentation is very important, forming a clear-cut conception of our filing cabinet, which must be strongly impressed upon our minds in order that we may mentally refer to it at a moment's notice. The development of the ideas involved naturally comes first, however, so that I must ask my readers to lay aside previous conceptions and give me their complete and careful attention, to which should be added repeated study if necessary, until they are in a position to grasp what undoubtedly is an abstruse subject for the beginner. The word Kabbalah is derived from the Hebrew root kuf bet lamed, Q.B.L, meaning to receive. And from this source we may indeed receive of the fruit of the tree of life. We must first, however, learn to transcend the knowledge of good and evil, and in fact, all the so called pairs of opposites. For it is written, equilibrium is the basis of the work. The study of the Holy Kabbalah will help us to attain this equilibrium. But we should give heed to the hidden warning implied by tarot in the very root Q.B.L itself, the illusion of the juggler with the balance. And the juggler was another name for the magician, if I remember right. In certain decks, it was also referred to as the juggler. In the beginning, the Kabbalists tell us there was nothing. Ein. I must refer to my readers. I must refer my readers to the essay entitled Bereshit, should they wish to inquire further in regard to the absoluteness of the Kabbalistic zero. And I may add their study will be well repaid. All right, make note of that. That's going to be something to do in the free time. Or maybe we'll do a group reading of that after we make our way through this. We'll see. You definitely do well to do for yourself when authors recommend to look into other things, to look into those things. This Ein is a conception entirely beyond the possibilities of human thought, it being, so to speak, the absence of all known qualities, including the idea of zero itself. There is another veil of the negative, which the Kabbalists call Ein Sof, without limit. This is referred to infinite space, the infinitely great, as Ein may be considered the infinitely small, yet space bereft of any known qualities and therefore impossible of conception by the finite mind. Once again, they added a veil to the primal nothingness of the beginning, or light, thus obtaining Ein Sof, or the limitless light of chaos. Even here, the mind falls back, unable to grasp what is still a negative conception until we consider this boundless light of infinity as concentrating in upon itself to a center or point of focus. And this we may apprehend only insofar as we too have succeeded in focusing our light in the center of our own being, thus obtaining, when all else disappears, a consciousness of the great unity of all things, the self existent crown of being. This crown the Kabbalists designate Kether, and symbolized by the point within the circle, attributing to it the number one, the basis of all numbers, indivisible, capable by multiplication of producing nothing but itself, incapable of addition to itself, save by reflection in the nothingness from whence it arose. We can none of us doubt the fact of our own existence, or at least of the existence of something, call it consciousness, or what we will. The why of this existence we know not, and indeed the fact that it is unknown ensures it as being beyond the possibility of doubt. The realization of this existence is not obtained by inference or deduction or by any known process. It is beyond and above knowledge, and to doubt it but implies the existence of one who doubts or denies. Should such a one be capable of blotting out from consciousness every known quality of the universe and of self, including the wisdom which makes the manifestation of these qualities possible, yet that one could only say, there remains something which exists and which comprehends nothing. Should he again seek to comprehend that something, he must turn back again upon himself, creating thereby a certain seeming duality, in order that the self may thus comprehend itself. Thus, also the one, by focusing itself within, first comprehendeth its essential qualities, which may then be said to become manifest. Firstly, cometh the idea of wisdom, which the Kabbalists call Hokmah, and with it the great illusion of Maya, I am I, or self recognition. But with this conception is brought to birth its eternal mate, understanding, Binah. And through this doth the one understand that this that is perceived is not I, thus denying the existence of the phenomenal self as being other than the reflection of truth. And herein lieth the root of sorrow, even as in Hokmah lieth the root of change. In order to make this most difficult conception clearer to the student, we may further consider the matter as follows. In Kether is begun the whirling motion of the universe, for it is known as the sphere of the primum mobile. This whirling combines within itself the ideas of self and not self, even as the holy word al, God or all, when read in reverse, is law, not or ein. Yet both are but different conceptions of the one word when looked at from within out or from without in. Let us consider Kether as the constant whirling of these ideas, self and not self, or God and not, one following the other so rapidly that neither can be affirmed or denied. We then see how Kether becometh that sphere in which selflessness is self. In Hokmah, corresponding to the number two, cometh the realization of this duality. How by his wisdom made he the worlds from the nothingness of his own being, and how in the very constancy of this change lieth the stability of the universe. As it is written, in Hokmah change is stability. Also in Hokmah is the reflection of the self of Kether, even as in Binah, the third Sephirah, is the reflection of its selflessness. Therefore, it is that the dweller in the city of the pyramids, or Binah, is called Nemo, no man, and no man may come nigh unto her. Now, these three are one, Kether, Hokmah, Binah, and they form the first triad of the tree of life, which is called the supernal triad. And here we have a drawing of that. Kether, the crown here at one, the center at top, then it goes down to Hokmah, wisdom, and across to Binah, understanding. The second triad was derived from this by reflection. For as these three are one, so this one and three again reflected itself, reversing as in a mirror. Thus we obtain two further Sephiroth harmonized in a third. So there he's talking about, yep, oh, well, we got a figure right here. How now this will be mirrored, a mirrored reflection of the supernal triad. And that's this triad here where you have Chesed, mercy, to Gibura, strength or severity, and then Tifereth, beauty. The Sephiroth Chesed, or mercy, corresponding to the number 4, is the reflection of the divine wisdom and shows forth the paternal and authoritative aspect of the One as the summary of the triple forces of life. The three underlying principles with their central point of equilibrium. The fifth Sephirah, Gibura, or strength, is the reflection of the enduring quality of the great mother substance of Binah, showing forth the strength to establish the authority of Chesed and forming a true balance therewith. As it is written, his mercy endureth forever. These balanced ideas are truly harmonized in the sixth Sephirah, which is called Tiferet, or beauty. For whereas it is written, unbalanced severity is but cruelty and oppression, and that unbalanced mercy but aids and abets evil. So in beauty and harmony is eternal truth revealed or revealed. For Kether is revealed in Tifereth as the Father is in the Son. Thus is the second triad completed and is in itself a trinity in unity. We thus have two triunities, of which the second is but the reflection of the first. But as no two ideas are complete in themselves until harmonized in a third, so a third triad is essential to the previous two in order to produce a trinity of trinities or triads. This then is shown as the complement of the second or a second reflection of the first triad. The seventh Sephirah, Netzach, or victory, shows forth more clearly the forces of attraction and repulsion which were seen to be inherent in Chesed. Also, it symbolizes the victory over or equilibrium of these forces through the wisdom and will, which descendeth from Hokmah. The eighth Sephirah is called Hod, or splendor, and produces the idea of vacillation, which is secretly inherent in the strength of Gibura through the influence of the selflessness of Binah. Yet this very vacillation produces a certain glittering splendor in the fluidity of mind and thought. And here is that figure of this lowest triad on the tree where you see Netzach over here, victory, crossing over to Hod, splendor, and then down to Yesod, the foundation. Both these, again, are harmonized and established in Yesod, which is the name of the ninth Sephirah and means the foundation. This is the sphere of stability in change. Even as in the supernal triad, we find Hokmah is called the sphere wherein change is stability. Welcome in for those of you just coming in. Finally, this trinity of triads, being in itself a unity, is symbolized by the 10th Sephirah called Malkut, the kingdom, a single sphere pendant to the above and summing up in itself all the foregoing qualities which it manifests according to the creative plan. All these qualities may be said to be potentially inherent in Kether, the crown, with which Malkuth is, in a certain mystical sense, one. As it is written, Kether is in Malkuth, and Malkuth is in Kether, but after another manner. Dub VT, welcome. Always great to see you. You're very welcome for reading. I hope you get a real kick out of this one. So far, so good. The number 10 attributed to Malkuth is the symbol of the unity, returning to zero. For even as Kether is one from naught, so is Malkuth not from one. The material universe being, in a certain sense, the result of the illusion of Maya, though, in another, it is the perfection of the creative plan, the crowned and conquering child, the pearl of great price, the bride and pride of God in his creation. So, right there gives you a little more hint as to his bride's reception. Thus far, we have mapped out very briefly the plan of the Sephiroth, or numerical emanations, as they are sometimes termed. It is important to note this name, for the Kabbalistic plan is based on conceptions of pure number. All the correspondences which may afterwards be mentioned and attributed to these 10 Sephiroth will have their roots in the number of the Sephiroth. Corresponding, thus we may collect 100 ideas in regard to Tifereth, but they will all be referred to the number 6. So that in time, 6 will come to mean to us the key of a vast storehouse of ideas. This applies to the other numbers of the decimal scale. Let us now formulate more clearly the result of our researches by means of a diagram. And here is that diagram, which is just showing these triads and then Malkuth down here at the bottom. So the supernal triad, the gosh dang it, I always forget. I want to say that the astral triad and then the etheric triad down here, and then Malkuth. All right. This shows clearly the trinity of triads with Malkuth pendant to them, manifesting their influence in the material universe. Now, there is another manner in which the formulation of the 10 Sephiroth emanating from the one light may be expressed, and this, without unduly confusing the reader, I desire to show, since it illustrates in an able way the dual nature of each Sephiroth. This is called by the Kabbalists the lightning flash, and it connects the 10 Sephiroth as shown in the following diagram. So right there, that most all of you should be familiar, but for anybody who's not, is that lightning flash where you start from one, coming down, boom, and then you get that. Here's that crossing of the abyss. I'm sure that's why it's dashed in, but still, you get that 7, 7, 7. on down to the kingdom Malkuth. It is also known as the flaming sword, which is united with the idea of the serpent of wisdom, as will be more fully explained later on. This idea is useful as showing how each Sephirah receives a certain influence from the preceding one, and in turn transmits its nature to the one following. Thus, Hokmah may be considered as receptive or feminine in its relation to Kether, from which it receives a divine breath, which becomes formulated in Hokmah as the word or logos, but as a positive or masculine in regard to Binah, to which it transmits the word or wisdom. This is in turn understood or received by Binah, from whence it is projected into Chesed, and so on. The process apparently becoming completed in Malkut. This is only apparent, however, since there is a certain method of return, whereby the seemingly fallen kingdom is once more raised to the supernal and absorbed into the crown. The plan of what we have termed our filing cabinet is not, however, as yet complete. In the same way that we found a triple aspect in unity, and that every duality found its completion in a third idea which represents its true being, so each Sephirah partakes of the nature of a trinity. For while we have said that each receives the influence from its predecessor in the scale of numbers and transmits its influence to its successor, yet each is unique in itself and retains a certain individuality of its own. Mesla is the name given by the Kabbalists to this influence, which links together the Sephiroth, and it operates not only along the course of the flaming sword, but in other directions. The following diagram will make this matter clear. And there is the tree with the paths connecting, the glyph we all know and love. And in here, he just has the colors written, which are the queen scale colors. I'll have to plan to grab my sketchbook so I can show you guys. I've got drawn up, well, I've got a handful of trees drawn up, but I've got one where it illustrates that the way you'll most commonly see it and use it, which is going to be the paths of the king scale, but the queen scales, the spheres, the Sephiroth in the queen scale. It represents, as far as its structure is concerned, the complete plan of the tree of life, the details of which we shall enlarge upon as we proceed. It is sometimes called the minutium mundum, or little universe of color. And I shall next tell you something of the way in which its colors are derived, as by this means you will obtain a clearer conception of the interplay of Mesla between the Sephiroth. Firstly, Kether being the concentration of the pure brilliance of the divine light of Ein Sof R is portrayed as white. Secondly, Hokmah, as the middle number of the first trinity, is called gray, which is a mixture of white and black, representing all colors. Thirdly, Binah, the last of this primary scale, is black, or that which absorbs all colors. The supernal triad is then represented as white, gray, black. See plate 2 between pages 110 and 111. And these form the roots of the colors which follow. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick look at that for us. Okay, so yeah, here he's got colored in the minutium mundum, plate 1. Hey, page 17, shout out my noses. All right, the second triad manifests the three primary colors red, blue, red, and yellow, which are attributed to Hesed, Gebra, and Tifereth in that order. These, as it were, draw their nature from the king scale, concealed in those above, as will be explained later on, viz. Hesed blue from Hokmah, Gebera red from Binah, and Tifereth gold from Kether. Yeah, because in the king scale, that's the colors of the supernal triad is Hokmah. Kether just always stays with that brilliant white, but Binah is like a crimson, and then Hokmah is like a kind of more of a pale blue. It's pretty cool. The second triad transmits its color to the third, its complement by means of a mixture of or blending of its rays. Thus, the blue of Hesed combined with the yellow of Tiphereth produces the emerald green in Netzach. The red of Gibura combining with the yellow of Tifereth produces the orange of Hod. Finally, the blue and red of Hesed and Gibura produce the purple of Yesod. Hmm. The third triad, in turn, transmits its colors to Malkuth in a certain fourfold manner. Hod and Netzach reflect into the upper portion of Malkuth, and the mixture of their colors produces a citrine tinge. Netzach and Yesod produce the olive green portion of the sphere. Hod and Yesod produce the russet brown, while the synthesis of all colors forms the black of the lower quarter. Thus, we perceive the whole tree vibrates between the light and the darkness and is composed of the colors which naturally arise between these extremes. It should further be noticed that the influence or mesla operates so as to connect all the Sephiroth by means of 22 paths, which added to our original 10 gives in all a 32-fold classification. The Sefer Yetzirah, an early Kabbalistic treatise, calls the whole scheme the 32 paths of wisdom. And when so considered, the Sephiroth are numbered from 1 to 10, as in our plan, and the other connecting links follow from 11 to 32, as shown in the diagram. Should one read, for instance, of the 31st path, it would mean that which connects Hod with Malkuth. This is important as it will prevent confusion later on. It will also be apparent that the Sephiroth, in addition to receiving influence from their immediate predecessors, as explained in diagram of the lightning flash, derive to some extent from each other. Thus, Binah, in addition to receiving a ray from Hokmah, receives a direct ray from Kether, and so on. See Figure 5, page 14. This difference is only apparent, however, for the influence is really inherent in the ray received from Hokmah. On first consideration, this may not be clear, and the distinction is of minor importance, except as in establishing that all the qualities were inherent in the Sephiroth if considered as the result of the lightning flash instead of under the form of the triad. It will be seen also, for example, in the case of Tifereth, that it receives a direct ray from the five preceding Sephiroth and itself harmonizes all of them. The same is true of Malkuth as manifesting the whole tree. These paths or influences operative between the Sephiroth are very important as a development of our plan or filing cabinet and will be dealt with fully in the following chapters. Before completing the present section, however, it is necessary to speak of the nature of the 10 spheres from another aspect. It will be remembered in regard to Kether, the crown, that we called it the sphere of the premium mobile, for therein began the whirling forces which became in turn the cause of the system of revolving orbs, or star universe. Hokmah is therefore known as the sphere of the zodiac, or home of the fixed stars. We next arrive at the outermost of the then known planets, Saturn. This is attributed to Binah, which is called the sphere of Saturn. Next, we find Jupiter, corresponding to Hesed, while Mars is attributed to Gibura. In the center of the system is Tifereth, which is called the sphere of Sol, the sun. Netzach and Hod correspond to Venus and Mercury, and Luna, the moon, is attributed to Yesod. Finally, Malkuth is called the sphere of the elements fire, water, air, and earth, playing upon which are the influences of all the foregoing celestial orbs. The results of our study so far may be summarized as follows. First triad. 1. Kether, the crown, premium mobile, white. 2. Hokmah, wisdom, sphere of the zodiac, gray. 3. Binah, understanding, sphere of Saturn, black. Second triad. 4. Chesed, mercy, sphere of Jupiter, blue. 5. Gibura, strength, sphere of Mars, red. 6. Tifereth, beauty, sphere of Sol, yellow. Third triad. Netzach, 7. Netzach, victory, sphere of Venus, emerald green. 8. Hod, splendor, sphere of Mercury, orange. 9. Yesod, foundation, sphere of Luna, purple. And pendant. 10. Malkuth, the kingdom, sphere of elements, citrine, olive, russet, and black. These correspondences should be memorized with care by all students, and they should familiarize themselves with the plan of the tree of life so that their minds are quite clearly impressed with its formation and parts before proceeding with the further study of this work. Well, all right then. That does it for the introductions and chapter one. And yeah, I would recommend, so I know I've said it before, but for any of you who have not yet drawn up a little tree of life, Dino Assassin, hey, hey, what up? So for any of you who have not drawn up a little glyph of the tree of life, do it. Today is your day. Tonight is your night. Go ahead and even if you just draw up a small one like this here on the front cover of the book, and go ahead and color in those correspondences of the spheres At the very least, do the spheres for now. You don't need to worry so much about, I mean, definitely bonus points, extra credit if you color in the paths, whether in the queen or the king scale color correspondences. But for now, I mean, you could even just color them in black, but definitely at the very least, color in the spheres and even label those correspondences he gave us at the end. So above tether, put premium mobile, um, or how did he word it? He said sphere. I think he just put premium mobile, and then he started in on the spheres, huh? Dino Assassin says I fell asleep. Well, yeah, he did. He did just put premium mobile. So then on Hokmah, sphere of the zodiac, Binah, sphere of Saturn, and then color them in. It will, for any of you who haven't locked it in yet, it will certainly help you to lock it in. And Dino Assassin said, I fell asleep while you were reading last time. Sorry. And Friendly Tag, what's up? Good to see you again. Welcome back. Says, hello. Sorry I'm late. That's all right. One thing you'll find is you're never actually late. You're always right on time. You're always right where you're supposed to be. Today, however, yes, we are done with our first session, our first reading of Q.B.L. But definitely catch the replay. Definitely lock in these first initial correspondences of the tree of life so that you can start in the very first steps of your filing cabinet. I hope for those who were here, though, for this first session, I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are looking forward to more of this book. I hope so much so that you decide to go purchase a copy of the book because it never is a bad idea to have these books on your shelf, that's for sure. Plus, if I remember right, Amazon's running like a coupon right now on quote unquote spiritual books. So you might be able to get it on a pretty good price. And anything that's got lawn tied up in it is certainly going to be worthwhile, even if it's just an introduction. I would highly recommend, though, reading Lon Milo DuQuette's book on Kabbalah as well. That one is definitely one of the better books on Kabbalah I've read, along with Beyond Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah and Gareth Knight's practical guide to Kabbalistic symbolism. And that's all right, Dino Assassin. We will catch you next time. All right, then. Well, I think that's going to do it for today. Don't really got much else to say. The sun's shining, the money is ready to be made, so let's do it. But get to drawing. How many of you still need to do your birth talisman from the Ophiel? I know I don't. I drew that thing up, but Ophiel said what? Don't show it to anybody. Otherwise, I'd show it to you because it's pretty cool. But go ahead and do yours. Get it made up if you have not yet. Harmonize yourself with your sun sign, and then draw yourself up a little tree of life. Color it in. Well, you guys, session one was a lot of fun. Much love to you all. I appreciate you all for being here because that's part of why I like to do this in the first place. I said to myself at one point, I said, you know, why not turn on a camera? Because I'm always reading so much anyway. Why not turn on a camera about it so that others can get this wisdom? Oh, hey, I can put my bookmark in. Cool. Chapter 2. It looks already ahead like, yeah, some Hebrew alphabet. So that'll be fun because we always love to up our Hebrew game At least I do. I don't know. Hopefully you do too. All right, get to work, get busy, get making your birth talisman, get busy making a drawing of the tree of life. It's fun. You'll have fun doing it. I promise you. Unless you like really hate to make little arts and crafts projects, then you might not have fun with it. You might find lots of frustration with it. Do it anyway so that you can help lock it in. Okay, that's going to be enough yapping. Much love to you all. This has been J.B.L and the first session of Frater Achad's Q.B.L. Enjoy the rest of your Monday or whatever day it is that you come across this. If you're new and you enjoy this content, be sure to hit a like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.